Matthew Miller is a roller coaster designer who, over the past decade, has helped design all sorts of projects for both Universal and Disney. And he's here with us just now. How are you doing today?
Hi, it's so good to hear from you. I'm doing well. How are you today?
Yep, I'm doing great. So, as a roller coaster designer, do you visit theme parks often as a sort of non work thing?
I do. I am in a theme park at least 2 days of every week, at
Wow.
least. So I go to a lot of theme parks.
And does the thrill still exist for you? It doesn't get old.
I get that question a lot.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think I get even more of a thrilling feeling now that I'm like part of the industry and get to work on it from like behind the scenes.
That's interesting. And when you're at the theme parks, do you nick any ideas?
Oh gosh. So yes, I when I'm at the parks, you'll experience something and you think, oh, that's really neat, or oh, maybe I wouldn't have done it that way, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But what I enjoy the most about it is, there's theme parks all around the globe, but the community of people that build the theme parks, it's actually quite small. There's
Yeah.
a relatively small number of organizations that help build theme parks. So what I really like is when I know that like I had a friend or a previous coworker that designed an attraction or worked on a special effect, and then get to go to the park and experience it and be like, oh, like I know the person that did that, and I know
Yeah.
what they were thinking when they did that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that must be thrilling. So, which roller coasters have you helped design? Is it any ones that we'll know?
Yeah, I would think so. So when I say I'm a roller coaster designer, I've designed roller coasters, but I've also designed all sorts of attractions. And
Yeah.
normally when I meet someone, I say I'm a roller coaster designer, and they'll say, well, like did you do this ride or this ride? So in general, the things that I have worked on and rides that I've worked on is I started with Disney and I did some work for their original Disney Dream cruise ship,
Ah.
and we did a special effects show for Mickey Mouse as part of that cruise ship. Then I spent a lot of time over at Universal, and I worked on first on a couple of simulated attractions. So we did a Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem, as well as Transformers the Ride 3D. And then the first sort of real roller coaster I worked on was Escape from Gringotts, which is part of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Diagon Alley. Then we did a couple of kids coasters that we call the Flight of Hippogriff. Those are smaller attractions. Then we worked on some even bigger rides. We did a Transformers roller coaster over in Beijing.
Wow.
We've did a giant Jurassic World water attraction, which is kind of like an indoor coaster. There's a big drop at the end of it. So we've been lucky enough to work on attractions all across the globe.
Yeah, that's an incredible CV you've got there. So, what is that process like when you're designing a roller coaster? How do you actually do it?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that surprises me the most is the length of time that it takes to build an attraction. So,
Hmm.
from there's different varying degrees in terms of overall level of theming. So I'll give you an example. Let's use like a regional theme park. Let's say something like a Six Flags or a SeaWorld or a smaller park, and they build a roller coaster, and it's a green roller coaster. They may call it the Green Monster. And outside of having like a large sign at the entrance, there's really no theming for the roller coaster. It's just the track and the car. Something like that, you can usually turn that around in about a year to 2 years. If it's already been designed, because oftentimes parks will share the same design of a roller coaster,
Hmm.
and they'll just alter it just a little bit. You can get that done in a year or less. But then if you start to, grow on the theme, and let's say you do something like in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Escape from Gringotts, that's an attraction with an entire land, that can take 5 to 6 years or longer to develop, because you're building in the story, you're building into the architecture of a city, like it's much larger. So I would say anywhere from a year to 6 years, depending on the attraction. And honestly, most attractions start with the story,
Hmm.
something that, like I said, like these regional parks where maybe it's not a lot of theming and they want to call it the Green Monster. Well, okay, what are we going to call it? It's going to be called Green. Like, let's just build it.
Yeah.
Versus, maybe something that's going at a Disney or a Universal where it's a very intricate story, and maybe it's even an intellectual property that, generations know about. So you've got to get it right. That can take several years.
Yeah, that has surprised me that it does take so many years, but thinking about it, I guess it makes sense because they are massive structures, aren't they?
They are, yeah. They're massive structures. And some of the things that take a long time is, one, the structures are so large. And then two, the other one, like the ones that have a lot of theming, often it's more than just a roller coaster. Like the roller coaster will go, like it'll fly by a large IMAX screen, or there may be an explosion that happens. Or for example, in Green Dots, that's a roller coaster. You're on the coaster, but the vehicle actually rotates 360 degrees while it's moving along the track. So things like that, one, there's a lot of engineering into the safety, but also you just want the show to be right. Like you want someone when they're on the ride not to realize they're on a roller coaster. You want to tell a story, but there's so many little details that have to happen at a precise timing, and that timing can take quite a while to get perfect.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the roller coasters having a story. I guess that's quite important because I'm guessing it's probably not a coincidence that most theme parks that we know are related to entertainment companies like Disney and Universal.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a coincidence there at all. Honestly, I think just part of human nature is that we all connect to a story. We can think of our favorite movie or a book that we read in school, maybe a story that, our parents or our grandparents told us, at a festival or some holiday that we were celebrating at home. We just connect well with stories. And then I think the flip side of that is we've all been to a movie and we've watched a scene in a movie and we've thought, how cool would it be to actually experience that in real life? Yeah. So then as designers, we get this opportunity to, we had that same feeling. We go to a movie and we think, oh, that scene in that movie, it was so neat. That would be such a cool ride. And then get to translate that into the real world. It's challenging, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what kind of roller coasters do you do in general? Is it the big scary ones? Or you wouldn't really call this a roller coaster, but do you sometimes work on lighter ones like teacups and things?
I do, yeah. So in terms of like actual roller coasters, there's different ways to categorize them. Most of the ones that I have worked on are things that we call dark rides. And what's meant by that is they are inside of a show building, a very large warehouse or soundstage. And the reason for that is if you can build a roller coaster that is inside the dark, then you can add theming. You could add the projection screens, the large robots, the animatronics, that sort of thing. They're also classified based off of their speed. There's wooden, there's steel, there's hyper, there's giga coasters. But then on top of that, there's simulated attractions, like you were saying. There's teacups. Yeah. An attraction like a teacup, we call those flat rides. And what that means is that they sit flat on the ground, so they can spin you around, they can twist you around. But I have worked on several flat rides. One that I did is called Twirl and Hurl, which is a funny name. It is part of the Simpsons land at Universal. And the story there is basically there's this alien invasion and you are sitting inside of UFO saucers and you're going around in a circle. So it's a small flat ride, something that would be considered in the same family as a teacups attraction.
Yeah. Shouldn't Simpsons Land be at Disney now though?
That's a good point. Yeah. So Universal, they did have the rights to it. They built it in their park, the theme park rights, and then Disney bought Fox, who technically does own Simpsons. But yeah, it's currently at Universal. But good catch there.
Yeah. So what is your day-to-day schedule like as a roller coaster and attraction designer?
So the first thing I'll say is I'll share with you my day. But for anybody that's listening and maybe that wants to get into the industry of theme park, which by the way, I definitely recommend it. I love it, love it, love it. When you build an attraction, you can have hundreds to 200 of different types of people working on the attraction. Mechanical engineers, civil engineers, people that are like lawyers that are going out and getting the IP, people that are working with permits of the city, architects, folks that are landscaping, rock work, painters, operational leaders, you name it, they're there. But for me, I I was on the project management side. So what I did in my role is I would be given parts of the project that I had to manage, obviously as a project manager, and I had to oversee that. So I would often be working on multiple attractions at the same time. So what my role would look like is I would normally it's a 9 to 5 p.m. type day. I would get in about 8:30, and I'd start answering emails, things from the day before. And then normally in the morning, my schedule consisted of meetings. So it would be going to meet with the different project teams. It could include, the engineers that are working on the ride vehicle, to the artists that are working on the sculptures, to the projectionists that are installing the IMAX screens, like just kind of across the board. And I focus a lot on the technology portion. So we're very tech specific in those meetings. Then often in the afternoons, I would be hard hat, vest, construction boots, walking the actual construction site.
Wow. So it's a very hands-on job as well as blueprints and things.
Yes, it's very hands-on, especially in the larger organizations. And I think that's something that would surprise people, because you think, oh, like you design it and somebody, else comes in and builds it. But, especially for these large, intellectual properties, something like a Star Wars, a Harry Potter, a Minions, a Toy Story, whatever the case is, not only are you building this attraction, you're also working with the film studio that is, that owns it or that has produced the films. And they're right there with you, because they have to ensure that what you're building lines up with what they have shown in their movies previously. And, you'll say, hey, I want to do this. And they'll say, I don't think that really lines up with the film. Or you'll say, hey, I want to do this. And they'll say, hey, you know what, that wasn't in the film, but that definitely lines up with, the world that this film was built around. Let's add it.
Yeah, you got to do it justice, really. So what has been your most difficult project to work on, do you think?
Oh, wow. That is a really good question. So I think they level in difficulty only because, some of the studios are easier to work with. Some of the projects have a bigger budget. Some of them, it's work that's been done before versus things that haven't been done before. But I would say overall, probably the hardest one that I worked on was Transformers The Ride 3D. There's a couple of them around the globe, but the one that I'm specifically talking about is at Universal Orlando. And the reason is that is an attraction that in a normal day, a normal, time frame would take somewhere around 2 to 3 years to build. And in Orlando, we built it in just over 10 months.
Wow.
Which was absolutely insane. And that is in less than a year, there was, 11 months earlier, there was a different building there, a different attraction, came in, knocked down that attraction, cleared out the lot, rebuilt the attraction. And another thing that's really fascinating is that plot of land was right in the middle of an existing theme park. So that means if you want to work on it, one, guests are watching, right? You can't really hide it behind the scenes because it's right in the middle of the park. But the other thing is, if you've got equipment and like dump trucks and cranes, you have to drive them through the theme park. And because we were doing it so quickly, we would actually have a parade of dump trucks that would go through the theme park every day, which was really funny to see. We would send operations people out and they would stop the flow of guest traffic for a couple of minutes. And then we would bring in, the heavy equipment, the dump trucks, and then have them leave. But I just think because that one happened so quickly, and that was because they had already built a version of the attraction in Singapore and a version of the attraction in Hollywood. So it was more about just taking an existing attraction and making it fit in this plot of land. There were some changes, but overall it was an existing attraction. That was absolutely nuts to turn it around that quick.
Imagine being a guest and seeing that, though, thinking the parades here aren't what I expected.
That's exactly right. They're not throwing candy, they're throwing dirt. But it was funny.
How did you actually manage to do it so quickly in 10 months then?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One was, like I said, it was an existing attraction, so that really helped. So if oftentimes, let's say that a Transformers ride did not exist already. You've got years where lawyers, they're going to meet with Hasbro and other folks, that own the intellectual property, negotiating, can we do it? Can we not do it? Then you've got things such as, okay, we're going to use these big IMAX screens. Well, how does Megatron look on an IMAX screen? Does does it work? Like, what changes do we need to make? So, those multiple years of R&D or research and development, that had already been done. So that was a huge help. The second thing was it had been done multiple times. So not only was it like, oh, we've done it once, we've already done it twice. So like the purchasing of the ride vehicles, the programming of the ride vehicles, the things that normally trick somebody up, we've, for the most part, we've got that figured out. And then the second thing is we're just going to work 24/7, like multiple construction crews, from morning through night through overnight. And they just hammered it out. And, within a few months, it was up, and it was just absolutely nuts to see it go so quickly.
Yeah. And on the other hand, have you got any projects that you would say are the most fun to work on?
Oh, the most fun. Well, out of all of them, I personally prefer the larger projects. So something that includes an entire land. So I think a good example of this would be Diagon Alley in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And the reason is when you build an attraction, let's say a roller coaster or a log flume or whatever the case is, you can ride, like I can get on the ride and I can ride with a guest. Or one of my favorite things to do is to sit at the exit of the attraction, and I'll just like find a park bench and just listen to people when they're getting off the ride. And, what did, oh, I love this part, oh, it was so cool. Or sometimes they may, somebody may be, oh, I didn't like that part, or I didn't think it was as much fun. We'll take all criticism, but I like that. The difference is when you work on an entire land, two things. One is the project is normally much longer, so you get to know your coworkers a lot better. You kind of become this family for 3, 4, 5 years. But then also when you open up an entire land, it's more than just a ride. There's retail shops, or like there's the interactive wands, or there's stage shows, and there's just something about being able to walk through an entire world that you've helped create and see families and the different guests walking through and enjoying it. That there's just no better feeling.
Yeah. And do you get to test the roller coasters out before they're fully open to the public?
We do. So one thing about these parks is they want to ensure without a shadow of a doubt that what a guest is getting on is completely safe.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about like theme park, competition, Disney wants to beat Universal or vice versa. That may be true from a business standpoint, but both of them never want to see a guest get hurt at all. Like that is, that is something that we're in complete agreement on. All parks are in agreement on. So safety is a top priority. So what will happen when you're testing an attraction is first, there's a test called the push-pull test. And what this is a roller coaster is pushed and pulled along the ride track with this large ring around it. And it will take them, if you think about a roller coaster, normally a roller coaster ride can last anywhere from, let's say, 30 seconds to, if it's a longer ride with like simulations, maybe 3 minutes. This is a test that it's on that same track. It could take 2 weeks to 3 weeks just to complete one lap around the track.
Wow.
So they do like 6 inches a day, that sort of thing. Like it's just super slow moving. And what that does is it ensures that the roller coaster can smoothly go through the track, but the ring that's around the ride vehicle makes sure that someone can't get hurt, that, there isn't a prop or a screen or a flame effect that is too close that somebody's going to reach out and their hand's going to touch it.
Yeah.
So that's the first phase. And then after that, you run the vehicle a bunch, and you put, we call them test dummies, and they're normally filled with either sand or water. And they're like large boxes that you put in the seats, and they simulate the weight of a human. And then after that, that's when we get to test, and the designers and the people helping operate the attraction get to ride the ride. And also there's operations people that, they're the ones that put you in the seatbelt, or they're the ones running the queue and like welcoming the guests. They need practice. Mm-hmm. So often the designers will go be the practice people for the operations team, and we'll ride it a bunch, and they'll get their flow down, and then eventually the exciting day of a grand opening happens, and then guests get on the attraction.
Yeah. I suppose every so often you hear about some incident at a theme park on a roller coaster, don't you? What's your reaction to that? I guess it's quite unlikely, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is quite unlikely, especially if you consider, the thousands of roller coasters that are are, on the planet running every day with the thousands of rides that are taken. But to your point, sometimes, unfortunately, things do happen. One, my first reaction is it always makes me sad because I think I would never want that to happen to me or my family or my friends. One, the people that are on the attraction, it makes me sad. And then I also think about the designers and the people that spent years of their life building something and their name is attached to this attraction. And now that attraction is in the news and it says that it's hurt someone, I feel bad for both sides. I will say, and again, there's always different reasons. In my personal opinion, it feels like often the errors that happen on an attraction or for rides that you see more at fairs than you do major, like fairs and carnivals, than you do major theme parks. Not to take away from a fair or carnival, I'm a huge fan, but I think that things that you see sometimes are in the slip up of they'll build this, ride or roller coaster, and then it's up for a week, and then they tear it down, they move it across country, they build it in another city, and they're doing that, year after year, day after day. And I just think that when you take these attractions apart, sometimes rust and other things get in there, and and it's just harder to follow. Again, I'm a big fan of fairs and carnivals, but I feel like that can be an issue. But yeah, it's a sad day when it happens. But another thing that I will tell you, when those things happen, the entire industry studies it. So it doesn't matter if an accident happens at a major theme park or a very small theme park. There is a governing body that will go around and will look into these incidents, and then every theme park basically on the planet gets a report, and it will say, this is what happened, this is how we fixed it, and this is how you can ensure that incident doesn't happen at your park.
Yeah. And do you have any favorite roller coasters that you haven't actually worked on?
Oh, yes, I do. So one of my favorites is actually a brand new roller coaster that opened up in Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay, and it's called Iron Gwazi. It's a newish style. It's not brand new, but it's a newish style of coaster that comes from a company called RMC, or Rocky Mountain Construction. And what they've done is there's a wooden roller coasters, the old woodies. They used to be very rough roller coasters, and they would go fast, but they would jerk you around. They'd give you a headache often. They came out with a new style to where it looks like a wooden roller coaster, but it's made completely out of steel, and it can do inversions and flips, but you're in this little bitty car seat, like a roller coaster seat with just a little lap bar and a little belt. It is a heck of a ride, but they're called RMC Coasters, and this is a version of it called the Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens. I love that coaster. I also I'm a big fan of some of the older ones, like the Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain at Disney. Those were built way before I was in the industry, but it's hard to beat a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where can we keep up to date with you everywhere if we're interested in doing so?
Absolutely. You can find me on all social channels so the @ sign at WEWA Miller. It's pronounced Weewa Miller. I'm from a small town called Hitchka. So WEWA Miller, and you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, across the board. Some of these new audio platforms such as Clubhouse, AMP from Amazon, Wisdom, you name it. So anywhere that there's a social platform, if I'm on it, I use the same social media username, and would love to connect with you. And if anybody has any questions about how to get into the industry or what it's like working on an attraction, I would love to speak with you more about it.
Great. Well, many thanks for coming on the show today. It's been very interesting to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking to you as well, and I hope you have a great day.